for me, it's just a sense of living on an island and the community that that creates, right? So you have to, if you live in a big city or a place with a lot of people, you could be mean to somebody and maybe never see them again. But when you live on an island in a small town, you don't really have the liberty to do that if you want to last for a long time. And so there's that sense of community where I think, you don't want to burn bridges, and you want to make sure that, it's a golden rule, right? You want to treat people how you want to be treated. And there's this sense of collective community. I don't know if it comes from the plantations or just the Hawaiian culture from back in the day, but everybody's responsible for everybody else, right? There's this collective sense of, you pick up the trash at the beach, even though if it's not yours. If you see a kid in the street that looks lost, you just take care of them. You just, everybody has a sense of responsibility to everybody else. And, that's something that I think is definitely, I'm not saying it doesn't exist in other places, but it's definitely more universal and stronger here. And like we said in the past, right? If you don't have that, and that's not that's not a racial thing or a cultural thing. It's really just a human thing. And the humans that don't have that don't make it here, right? So it almost is a self weeding out process with the community here. Is if you don't have that, it just, if that doesn't appeal to you, you don't last a long time here.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point that you bring up. I think it's the fundamental part of island living. It's a fundamental part of what you got in a small, tight island community, which is a kind of, no matter how big or small Hawaii may feel, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny place in so many ways. Scott, what's your take on this topic?
Yeah, island living in the tropics in and of itself is going to lend itself to a slower pace, a more relaxed pace, a more, enjoy the weather, enjoy the environment.
Here, thank you, Joan. I grew up in New York, which is a true melting pot, but here it seems, at least so far for me, I've been lucky to not meet any, quote, strangers. Everyone is friendly and welcoming. Yeah, I give it to tell you my perspective on this whole thing. I had, I was born in Chicago and came to Hawaii when I was 21 years old. And what really struck me about the melting pot was I thought that Hawaii is much, much, much better integrated culturally, racially than Chicago is, for example. Chicago, like Joan says, like New York, it's a melting pot. There's all kinds of, everyone's there. However, in Chicago, people kind of keep to their respective neighborhoods. There's Chinatown, there's Greektown, there's the Italian district, there's the Black district, there's the Hispanic district, and there's like these little pockets, so you can kind of drive from one little pocket to another. But even though there's a melting pot, it's like if it's a melting pot, not really, because all the ingredients are separate. Whereas when I came to Hawaii, what really struck me, and you could just kind of see it in your neighborhood, is like, you got the Filipino guy with the, I'm, just rattling off on my own neighbors, a guy, Japanese, Korean, Filipino, Haole, Polynesians, and we're all in the same block. And this is the case almost universally throughout Hawaii. I love that idea of a true cultural melting pot where people are living side by side. And I think that's an amazing piece. I think the other thing that really kind of struck me, and when I first came here, I never forget the first time, was that I was like, couldn't have been here for like more than a couple of weeks, right? And I'm cruising in Waikiki, and I saw what really struck me was I saw a mixed race couple. It was a Japanese girl and an African guy, and I saw the two of them. And what was so cool about it was that no one even gave it a second glance. Zero. It was just like, who cares? Like nothing, right? Whereas, in certain areas of Chicago at the time, this was in the early '80s, and you may have gotten at least a couple of second glances, right? It would have been something out of the ordinary. I think that was the issue as I kind of verbalized this. In Hawaii, it was nothing. It was not at all. It was like I par for the course, totally natural, totally normal. Where in Chicago, it's like, oh, gee, you don't see that too often. So I don't know this out there. Ray says, I spent 6 years with the Army on Oahu years ago. Love the people, culture, and way of life so much. We finally bought a condo when we're in a position to do so. I'm so glad you did. Next week. Awesome, Ray. Terrific. Excellent. Welcome. Good. Glad to hear that. That's what it is, man. And, and Dylan, I think to your point, I think there is a big piece of the island culture, and I got to believe it goes down to, to the host culture, the Native Hawaiians that kind of got the whole ball rolling. To live on an island and survive when everything has to be essentially sole sourced, right? You can't import anything because that's all you've got. You've really got to help out. You've got to help each other out, right? And you've got to have the sense of family and community, and you have to look out for each other for your own survival. If not a selfish reason, it's for your own survival. And I think that very thing, and the other part, Dylan, what you said, and this is very true. You made a comment with I love, which which is, on the mainland, you could kind of be nasty to somebody and you'll never see him again. It ain't gonna matter. And I remember, some nights being with some friends back when I was, young and stupid, and my young friends doing stupid things. I'm thinking, yeah, I don't care. I'm not going to see that person again. Not the case in Hawaii. You're probably related and you don't even know it. You're going to see them at the next job interview. Dylan, I don't know if you want to expand on it at all, but that's what been my observation.
No, it's funny because I just had this conversation with my son the other day where I had a brand new agent that's joining the industry who's my classmate, and I hadn't seen her in 20 plus years, really, even before high school, I think. But he asked me, he said, why is she joining with you? And I says, well, because I was nice to her in high school. Like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, but that's how important it is, and the way you act and the way you treat people is, you never know, 20 years later you could be in business with them, right? Or you could be doing something with them. And we have that all the time where we run into people that we haven't seen in decades, but if you were a good person, they remember the person that you were, right? Regardless of all the years that have gone by. And here's just another little example of this like the way we do stuff in the island. So we have 4 guests here from my jiu-jitsu gym for a seminar this weekend, and we had planned to train last night. And long story short, the place we were going to go, which we couldn't because of COVID, yada yada yada. So at about noon we found this out, and so instead we just shifted, and my coach tells me, hey, can we just have dinner at your house so we can at least feed them dinner and get together with everybody? And I said, of course. So the text messages start flying, and literally between noon and 5 o'clock we put together dinner for, I think there was probably almost 20 people, 22 people or something like that with the kids and everybody. And we had Korean chicken, teriyaki pork, smoked barbecue, like American, like Southern barbecue, pork belly, and short ribs, with poke, and I mean, so we had this massive feast, in like 5 hours notice, and they couldn't believe it. They're like, how do you guys do this? And it's like, this is what we do. I mean, just everybody says, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. I got the drinks, I got the tables, and we put off this huge event in like 5 hours notice. So, and the most diverse set of food you could ever eat, right? I mean, amazing spread of diverse food. So
great story that kind of summarizes the whole thing in kind of one fell swoop, right? It's the racial integration, as symbolized by the food, right? An incredible variety of food, right? All, the island way, which is everybody kind of pitches in. Yes, it's called a potluck, but still, it's everybody kind of pitching in and kind of being at the ramp it all together and doing it at someone's home. Doing it at someone's home. So all that, that's a great encapsulation, Dylan, of where